Right, this is Rita Carr, Chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission, calling the March 21st, 2025 meeting of the Historical Commission to order at 10:01 a.m. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format. So our commissioners online, please confirm that you can hear me. We've got Abby Molina.
I can hear you. I am here.
Great. And then for roll call in the room, we have George Butterworth.
Here.
Clement Durkees.
Here.
And myself as well. So we've got our quorum of 4. Also with us here in the room as staff, we have Preservation Planner Holly Backus. Oh, and just joining, we have Angus McLeod online. Angus, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Great, thank you. And this meeting will feature public comment. That is the but before we get to that, I would just, this is something that happened within 48 hours of our meeting. I would just like to publicly acknowledge the passing of our commission member, Diane Coombs, who passed away on Wednesday. We're very, such sad news, and she was so committed to Nantucket and to her commitment to public service, even as she was facing health struggles in these last few years, is just really admirable. And she was such a wealth of knowledge and witty and funny, and we're really gonna miss her. So just wanted to acknowledge that before we get to public comment. Is there any public comment today? I think we've got one member of the public, but not here for public comment. I would be surprised. Okay, great. So we will move on to our staff update. Holly.
Good morning. I did want to mention that I recently had a meeting with Gail Walker with Nantucket Lights. So she will actually be coming to the commission next month to give kind of an update. Remember a couple months ago, actually sometime last year, beginning of last year, I believe it was, she came to the commission talking about the dark skies and the bylaw, and even down specifically of the streetlights. So she came to see me and she wants to give an update. And more than likely, we'll probably have maybe her back at our May meeting as well after town meeting. So I wanted to give that. And you all did see, actually, we'll be discussing it later in the thing, but hopefully I'll be able to provide a little more time. I appreciate the commission's patience. I'm still in an adjustment pivot role with getting rid of a lot of that day-to-day HDC stuff, but I'm still doing reports. So my time frame on how I schedule my workload during the week is adjusting as well. So hopefully I'll be able to pinpoint specific times where I'm totally focused on historical commission. So that's it.
Great.
We look forward to it.
Yes, we did. Thank you, Holly. Next on the agenda, we have a repeat application for a historic rehabilitation tax credit for 89 Easton Street, and Brian from Epsilon is here for that. Brian, do you have any updates on the project or anything to share with us?
There have been no changes to the project. Oh, sorry, I'll introduce myself. Hi, my name is Brian Lever. I'm from Epsilon Associates. I'm a preservation consultant, and I'm representing the owner, William Murphy. There's been no changes to the projects as far as design or any outward appearance to it. It is in construction. You've probably seen it up in the air. So it's moving along.
I believe it's now down on a foundation, right? That was exciting to see.
Yeah.
All right, so commissioners, is any concerns or questions or?
It seems to me that everything is the same. That's what the letter has said. The project is on pace, I guess. Everything takes longer than you wish it to, but so I see no reason not to support it again.
Would you like to make a motion to that?
Oh, I so move that we support the 89 Easton Street application for a tax credit.
We'll write a letter of support.
I'll second that.
Great, so motion to support 89 Eastern Street, write a letter of support to the MHC for this project made by Clement, seconded by Abby. Clement on your motion,
Aye.
Abby,
Aye.
Angus,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Great, thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Brian.
All right, that brings us to the review of the comment letter that was in the packet for following up on the section 106 review conversation that we had last month. So we did get Holly had shared the packet with Mike Burns after it was posted. He commented that the letter, instead of being addressed to him, should be addressed to the consulting agency who are overseeing the project for the state. So I will make that change. Commissioners, did you have was there anything missing? Anything else you wanted to see in that letter?
Everything was there that we had talked about. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Good summary.
Yeah, I thought the letter looked good. I just was, I assumed that was why we changed the addressee, but that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I have no objections.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and I'll just make the edit in the to whom it's addressed, and we'll get that sent out. I don't think we need a motion for that. Right?
No, I mean, if you wanted to.
We already made a motion to send it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That was easy. Then we had a follow-up again from our January meeting on the Meridian Stone Protection. Again, the draft of the letter that I wrote up to send to Libby was also in the packet. If there were any questions or concerns, and Angus had drafted up a little image of what the Main Street, potential bump out of the sidewalk with protective bollards could look like. Holly, are you logged into your email on the computer? Could you share that?
I am not included in that. We can make sure we send it out to the commission.
Okay,
I didn't see it.
yeah, it was sent.
I'm sorry. I
Gotcha.
thought that was Holly and Rita that I sent it
Yeah,
to.
sorry.
But also with
Sorry.
there are also some photos that make more sense. It's very schematic. So they're photographs that sort of go with it of similar bump outs on Main Street with the granite and also the bollards, what they would look like. But the idea is that we would have something that has the strength and girth of the concrete filled lolly columns, but have the aesthetic appearance of those black bollards that are for the bikes, except without the loop. I did go and look in the cemetery as you had suggested, Holly, and there are many signs in that in the attachments with the bollard is a shot from the graveyard, and there are so many stones that ring the headstones and each person's plot, and you can see the holes in each stone for something that went in there, whether it was a bar that rusted out or a chain that rusted out. But they're only stones. There are no chains, no bars anywhere. There was one sort of dilapidated fence. But anyway, that's all.
Question?
Yeah.
Are there any other milestone markers? Milestones or, meridian
Right.
stones?
Those are the only meridians.
Yeah.
They was to
Those are the
set
only
that
ones.
north-south line for his calculations, but
Mhm.
So those are the only ones that are left.
I believe.
need protection.
Yeah, those are the ones that he put out,
Mhm.
William Mitchell,
Yeah,
and got approved by town meeting in 1840.
Okay, good. No, I
So
know
they're-
I know
they're
they're
town
important,
owned.
but I just didn't know if there were any other ones
Mhm.
that we needed to look at.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair, since I see Mike is still on the queue, I don't want to put him on the spot, but we are gonna be copying him and Drew on the email, on the letter to the town manager, so that way. And we appreciate Mike being here from the last discussion, so that we're all on the same page.
Mhm. Okay. I think. Oh, Mike, okay, great, thumbs up for Mike. So if there's no other comments or any changes on this, we can keep on moving. We had an update on the repairs to the Civil War Monument. I know Holly.
Yes, so, basically, oh, I'm gonna stop share, so we're out of that. I don't have anything that was able to provide with the packet, but, DPW works directly with a insurance company, Bartlett Consolidated. And they work with a company, in Massachusetts. They pretty much, are the ones that are gonna be doing this work, the restoration of the, Civil War Monument. And I spoke with a gentleman, named Frank. His company is called Colonial Stone, very, very knowledgeable. He is also, just for a little bit of background, not only has he been doing this for many, many years and working on in different cemeteries within Massachusetts, but he is also the chair of the Cemetery Commission in Plymouth. And if you all have been up to, the large cemetery, and I always remember what it's called, but it's up on the hill. In Plymouth, but you know, that's one of the first cemeteries. So I thought that was important. He was very clear in what they plan on doing, and I really wanted to make sure what type of stone they're going to be using. And basically a kind of a scope on what they were proposing to do. He came to the island, looked at the conditions. And of course, you can't really take anything with you. So he did what they call rubbing of the different obelisks, because the posts, he even said that there is evidence of these being hit in the past, not just the big hit that recently happened. So he'll be taking out 4 posts, 2 curbing. He'll be coming over with a truck. Of course, he's gonna have to have a police detail. He's gonna work with DPW and all that. But he's gonna have to remove a couple of the layers of Belgian block that are around it. I think there's Belgian block there, or is it cobble? It's a combination.
Tannish.
Yeah.
brickish.
It,
Yeah.
it is. So he's gonna have to take a few rows of that, so the bushes out. He's going to set the stones in, and the curbing, and one of the best things I heard was the fact that he's going to be doing it with compact stone, not the Portland cement. So that was good to hear. It sounds like he likes doing these for historic districts, so he's very knowledgeable in that regard. He's worked down on the Daniel Webster headstone. He's worked in other places within Mass, so that was cool. And I think what is important too is the metal, and maybe this is something to bring up with the protection that we want for the Meridian stones. But instead of having stainless steel, which actually corrodes the granite stone over time, especially being out here 30 miles out to sea, carbon fiber is used. And it doesn't, it's gonna work with the stone, and it's not going to bleed onto the stone, which is a good thing. He did stress that in the beginning, this very gray quarry granite is, granted, it's not Quincy, because Quincy stone is very, very difficult to get. But he did say that the patina will be there over time. It's gonna take a bit for that to get there, about a year or so, but you know, I feel confident, and he did say that when he gets here, he's gonna let me know. So I hopefully go out there and, you know, maybe take pictures and, you know, watch the work being done. So I was very appreciative to be, you know, having us included in this conversation. So of course, I will let the commission know when that takes place.
Great. Abby, with your hand raised.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Holly, I know you mentioned the Meridian stones. Do you think next time he comes back, we can see if he would walk by? Just because if he's already gonna be here, it would be great to see if we could have like a level of consistency, and since he's an expert and we're writing the letter, having a little bit of like, you know, giving gravitas to not just saying like, hey, this is what our commission recommends, but also a professional. I just wondering if we can, not to be cheesy, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, a very historical appropriate stone, but it might be worth if we can align. Only if you think the timing's gonna align. I just was wondering if you thought that would make sense.
It may work, Madam Chair, through you,
Mhm.
because he did say that, this is one of his top priorities. He works on a whole bunch of other different places, but the goal is to have this done before Memorial Day. We all know Memorial Day, we have the ceremony right down there. So that would be something, yes, I wouldn't mind, touching base with him on that if he can take a look at it. He did also mention that, it sounds like there's some preservation as far as like lichens and mold that happens with stones over time that also is being affected to this whole monument. So, something maybe down the road that is taking place on that. But yeah, it's a good point, Abby. I will definitely touch base with him on that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. I'm surprised they're replacing 4 of the posts, and I had emailed you about this, and not just the one that was really
You're
destroyed.
replacing them or just
Replacing them, right, Holly?
really?
That was my understanding.
And not just, particularly if the original monument is made out of Quincy granite, which was, hasn't been quarried since the 1960s.
Yep.
I would love to see if we could find a replacement. It sounds like that's not going to be feasible. Okay, we're going to use this berry granite from Vermont, but I would really like to see as little new materials introduced if it's not strictly necessary, and especially if the post that was hit that took the fullest brunt of the crash, could maybe pieces from that stone be used for like Dutchman repairs of the other stones, so that we can
Like
use that
cistern.
same
I think that
material?
stone's only about 20 years old.
Really? Oh, because it was.
Because that's the same one that a drunken woman blasting out of Gardner took out about 20 years ago.
Okay, so
I
that's
don't
good to
think that
know.
was
Maybe
real
that's
original.
not Quincy granite either then, and none of this really matters.
They
but
had any, it
still,
was about 20 years ago. Anybody
Okay.
else was around for this,
I don't remember.
Somebody came, same thing, blazing out of Gardner and just smashed it. I'm almost sure it was the same post. 'Cause that's what
Okay.
how you try to go around the monument when you don't make it.
And to that point, that's probably when the previous historical commission, back when Diane's daughter Diane was involved and she had emailed about the Quincy.
Mhm.
That's probably why they were doing a little bit of research at that point because of that replacement. That makes sense, actually. So, but he did say that there's evidence of every single one of those
Oh, I'm
posts
sure.
being hit. So more than likely, that's probably why.
Yeah,
And of course, you gotta remember this whole thing is going through insurance, and I think the insurance company is not gonna make them do more than what's necessary.
right.
On the
But
other hand, replacing 4 stones that didn't need to be replaced, that must cost some money. I don't know, I'm gonna go take a look. I'm just surprised.
yeah, Angus?
Oh, I like your reasoning, Rita. Replace less than more, which seems like it would be to the benefit of the insurance company. But also, I thought you were investigating reclaimed stone, a remnant of maybe the Quincy stone from some other site or situation that we could use for just that one post.
Yeah, I was trying to do a little digging there, but I think with everything having to go through insurance and everything, I'm not sure if there's the capability of going beyond the scope that's
Right.
because that would be more expensive.
Yeah. He basically, said that there's, the Quincy is just obviously not available. And that this is what they use in other locations. I mean, as much as I think it sounds like that the insurance company also, they use him quite a bit. Again, he seemed very, very knowledgeable. It was nice to actually talk to him. Didn't see anything in writing about the scope, but it was all verbal. But, I think he's, well, I mean, the fact that he called me because he knew how important and he does respect historic districts.
Yeah.
So giving him the benefit of the doubt, I think I know it's with scope, I'm used to seeing something in writing, seeing references, all that kind of stuff, but,
Did you get any sense of why you thought 40 place?
I didn't ask specifically on that. Maybe I should have. The expertise, and he came here. It's not like somebody told him he came and investigated, took a look at it.
Yeah.
He saw the conditions.
But you were not with him on that site visit?
No,
No, I wish.
yeah. I don't know exactly when it was. I'm thinking maybe at the end of February, like right after it happened.
Mhm.
So I think at the end of the day that, DPW is contacted the insurance company handles it, and all the communication is with the insurance company. As a matter of fact, that's how I got in contact information was when he called me. Knowing how important this project is to the historic district, and also he's busy too, so he wants trying to plug it into his time frame too.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know, but I did stress, importance of wanting to make sure that it fits in. This is an important monument, 1870s, I think is when it was installed. So,
Okay, so we have Frank's number.
Yep.
I would like to follow up with him and talk specifically, like, why are we replacing 4 posts when perhaps we could just do one? What would he think about doing smaller spot repairs on, if he feels like the 4 posts that he's saying, like the other 3 posts that he's saying should be replaced, like, what are the other options for repair there? How can we go about this? Because
I wonder if they're damaged below ground or something. I mean, they are
Right, like,
important
I'm sure-
to structurally protecting the monument itself. I would like to just take a little look with my totally unknowledgeable eye and see if there's like any obvious reason why they'd be replaced. But
Mhm. Yeah, and we can hear that.
I mean, just because you cannot replace it with like kind,
yeah,
Mhm. Exactly.
so try to keep the like kind as much as possible.
yeah,
Okay, great. Well, so we'll follow up with Frank either this afternoon or on Monday. And here hopefully get some additional information. All right, if there's nothing else on that, we can move on to the historic research surveys and the fiscal year 2022 survey forms, which have been received from PAL.
yes, thank you. This morning I sent you the report that I received with, the forms. I will tell you, I was thinking about bringing all of them with me, but in the rain, I'm like, no, it's okay. But I literally have a stack about this high of the paper copies. They're required to print those out on the nice paper, their actual photographs. And then I also have CDs that have JPEGs of all the photographs, and in addition to a Word document and a PDF document of every single survey. So of course, that's also been submitted to MHC. MHC will take a while before they can put them in within their database so we can see them on Macris. So in the meantime, I'm going to touch base with our public outreach coordinator with the town and see if she can get them on the website. I don't know how, it's almost 240, I think, surveys total. So that's a lot. But I think it's important to note that, that's the fish lots completed, which I think is an excellent thing to say. And then obviously starting within the Brant Point area. And then you'll notice on the forms, when we were originally reviewing them, none of them, unless they were original forms from the 1980s effort, there were NAN numbers, NAN dot, whatever. So then they have to request those numbers from MHC. So now all the forms that we have actually have the numbers on them, which is helpful. Anybody who follows any of the comments that I provide to the HDC, I'm always referencing the NAN number. It's important because that NAN number is never going to go away associated with that particular property. In addition, I think it's also important to note that the changes between having in the first survey effort in the 80s, where every single structure on a lot had a survey, not now. You're gonna see one survey form, but each one of the structures on the lot will have its own NAN identification and it will be outlined in it. And I think that's important to note. I'll give you an example of a property. I have an example of a property. There's been a couple on Holbert Avenue that have been before the commission. The HDC's reviewed an elevation of all three structures on the lot, so they follow the resilient Nantucket design guidelines. They all received historic determination application or approvals with that review. But more importantly, those individual three surveys have all now merged into one. But those numbers that reference those particular macro surveys are all on that same one. So again, there's just going to be a little bit of changes in that. But very happy to have them available. And my goal is, if anybody's been into the Plus department, we have the file. A lot of the old ones are stacked in together. It's kind of cumbersome to find them. So with our new survey effort, my goal is to have them within the binder and individual pages, you know, the clear pages. I've actually asked the admin to get those for me. So I've started doing that, and hopefully we'll have them in binders by the survey project and neighborhood until we come up with a different solution, because right now all those surveys are still helpful, which we'll see those updated in the past and in the future. So happy to pass that along on that.
Great. I'm glad we're closing that loop and glad
Yes.
to hopefully get those up on the website
Yes.
in their PDF form. Got someone confused up at the door.
And congratulations. I think that's a big, it's a
Yeah.
big thing.
Thanks to
Great.
Paul. They did an
Yeah.
excellent job.
Yeah,
With
and I'm-
assistance.
And, you know, we can move on to that 2023, getting that RFQ out,
Yes.
hopefully in such a way that we will have qualified respondents and
Yeah.
keep moving on our survey plan.
Yes.
Great. Next up, so we wanted to discuss this executive order declaring a national energy emergency and its impacts on section 106 review. So my understanding of this is one of the many executive orders recently issued, states that for energy products, they can skip because of this energy emergency, they can skip certain permitting processes, including section 106 review. So Holly, I know, was able to attend a workshop on this issue that was put on by Cultural Heritage Partners. Holly, did you have any?
Yes, so
More
I'm
points
actually
from that?
pulling up. I'm gonna actually send you on, I apologize, I didn't send it ahead of time, but this is the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation's discussion about the EO, the executive order, and where a relationship to section 106. They basically, at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily identify that section 106 has been impacted. However, if you read between the lines, and that's what a lot of the cultural heritage attorneys are really looking at, is we got to be above it and be aware of it. So this webinar was done by CHP. They had over 1,000 people across the country attend. And at the end of the day, this is to expose the threat and strategize on basically what the defense and have an organized action. Because what this could impactly do is circumvent section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, not require developers to go through the process and hinder our cultural resources. So, I think there's some gray area. They do have a, I didn't have it available, but I have, an email, website from Cultural Heritage Partners that talks about it. It's basically their landing page on what the actions are that organizations in the cultural heritage world should be doing, like us, to just be ahead of the curve. I haven't heard anything directly from MHC on this, the State Historic Preservation Office, and I just think it's important to note that. I think all of the state agencies are trying to pivot on exactly what this means, what that entails. I will say that, you know, we are still seeing section 106, like we just had the two from the state for the roads. But what does that mean from an energy perspective? And that's exactly what the CEO is for, about making energy more available and cutting the red tape, if you will. So I will send the link to the website as well as the specific EO for you all to review, but ACHP, you know, they should be something that we're always referencing. I don't know if that's, yeah,
For sure.
they have a landing page. CHP also has a landing page. You know, section 106 is very important. So just wanted to bring it to the commission's attention.
Yes, thank you. And does the advisory council have a new chair?
Not yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's, my understanding, they don't have a chair or a vice chair.
Yeah.
And the former only paid employee for ACHP, Sarah Bronin, she resigned before President Trump became sworn in. So they're, yeah, but I do understand that they were still involved with preservation action that took place in DC a couple weeks ago. So there is movement at that, and preservation action obviously is very important for pushing the importance of historic tax credits. So,
Yes. Great. If there's no questions on that or comments, we can move on to discussion of the Easy Street flood mitigation feasibility study. We did have our joint meeting with the select board last Wednesday. Thank you to those of you who were able to make it. We did wind up having a quorum eventually. It was all good. But so we saw three different options, and then there were the two public information sessions that happened earlier this week. I'm not sure if any of you
I did,
you joined that
because I
one.
had to leave
Yeah.
the joint, so I saw into that.
Yeah. Did anyone at the commission level, any thoughts, any additional comments, or Holly, have you heard anything from your?
I think we have a meeting next week
Okay.
to regroup after their open houses, after the meeting that we had with the select board. But you all had seen the timeline. They do have, this is again, a feasibility study, but at the end of it, when it goes till June with the CZM grant, they want the select board to choose a direction. So obviously, I think this commission, the HGC, both of you together, you know, have a voice that needs to be, you know, mentioned to the powers that be on this. It's important. I don't lose the sight of, as the town's hazard mitigation plan coordinator, which will be updating that pretty soon. I don't lose sight the fact that it's important. But at the same time, at what cost to our National Historic Landmark and the character and setting of the historic district. So whatever comments I think you all have, it might be important to put down on paper and provide to the select board before they make their determination, which my understanding will be sometime in May.
Okay,
So,
great. So we can carry this over to our April meeting to
yes.
put our comments together more concrete. Yes.
The thing I noticed was at the open house, they asked everybody to rank their favorites, and the 8-foot wall came in as the least favorite. Everybody was opposed to that. Of course, it's got the most coverage, longer term,
Right.
but it was the one that everybody hated the most, so. It's gonna be a long ride between what should be done and what people approve of. Of course, you're not gonna get
Mhm.
everybody's approval,
No, it's-
but the people who went to the open house, I think, were ones that cared. So I just found that interesting, and they found 6.5 was more palatable, I should say.
I was going to say that I asked them about being able to incrementally add on so that if they started with the 6.5, could they bring it up to 8? And the other things that I brought up when we met at the select board meeting, but then the HDC meeting the following day. And so I'm hoping to hear some of those things get addressed, as they move into the next phase.
And if I may, Madam Chair, just to clarify with what Angus said about the HDC, they had a non-public hearing. 2 commissioners at a time, basically, we're in a Zoom meeting with the consultant team going over the proposal instead of being at the public meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Great.
And as soon as I find out more, I know that there's a survey that they had shown. I don't have the link of that, so I will forward that as soon as I get it. But I think it's important not only for anybody in the public to, because that was my whole comments to the team, is what is the public going to say? This is absolutely something that the entire public from both year-round residents and summer residents to provide their comments on, so.
definitely. Great.
Yeah, I don't understand how a short wall does much though. I mean, why won't water just come around the ends of it?
Yeah, it sounds like they've done a lot of modeling to really, look
Force of the
at,
water rather than the level of the water.
I think so, and
It
they
just
know
seems like
like
there's a
where
million ways for water to get there.
yeah, and I guess the main problem now is sort of gaps along where like the Easy Street Park, like bulkhead connects to like the, bulkhead as it
Yeah.
goes along the road
Yeah.
and like different points that they're trying to,
Reinforce.
eliminate with all, like one cohesive big.
And in addition to that, the thing, and I don't really understand this well, but I understood it more, was the runoff. Down the hill, because it seems to me that's just gonna run off and collect.
Right.
So there has to be something done in between.
Watershed.
And
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, to see the map of that whole drainage area for where,
Yeah.
how water from such a large chunk of town is all being funneled into that.
Yes,
One
I
little
didn't.
spot, and how, what are the opportunities for green solutions further upland to
Because
try
you've
and
got the
absorb
water
more of that
coming
water and
down,
keep
the
it
water
from
coming
getting there.
in.
Yeah, I think that could be,
Yeah.
that could be an interesting opportunity that would have less of a visual impact potentially, in,
But that takes land, right?
that takes land, which there isn't really much available.
Yeah.
But maybe is a part of the solution,
Yeah.
which it sounds like, that's what's being explored too.
Mhm. But also impacts the historical significance tremendously.
I think they said it was 52 acres that sheds the water down there. It's a fairly large area, and I did bring up the sort of the rivers on either side of Main Street. And I think at some point there were cisterns on Main Street for fire. I'm not sure, but
Yes.
Yeah.
maybe that could be utilized for dry wells along Main Street where they would be invisible, and then the drains could go, near the gutters or the curbs on either side to capture that water. There's so much water that comes down Main Street, especially everybody hardscapes everything.
That's a good point, Angus. I do think that they filled in some of the
Yes.
cisterns,
I
I
was gonna say
believe,
that.
unfortunately. But I agree with you that, before we And like Rita was saying earlier, before we start like redoing everything, we should examine like some of those options of things that are already there. So like reuse what we have as opposed to having to completely start from scratch. So I do think it's a good idea, because even if they're filled in, like, is it filled in with concrete or is it filled in with sand? You know, is there something, could we remove, whatever? I do think it's a good point.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I do think the town was worried about their liability. That there was a big one in front of the Pacific National Bank that they
Yeah.
discovered. It
Mhm.
was sizable.
Ooh, there was one there. There was also one further down Center Street in front of the JC House. There've been, I mean, you gotta think about it, after the Great Fire of 1846, that was a big push to, okay, we need to prepare, and you had individual property owners that had the wherewithal to do it, to have the cisterns. I know that every once in a while, there's different ones being found, so.
Mhm.
But one thing that I did mention at the select board meeting, and I've mentioned it, you know, to the project team, is the elephant in the room is stormwater, really and truly. We understand that there's groundwater, we understand that there's sea level rise, we understand that we have nuisance day flooding and all that, but at the same time, we have a lot of impervious surfaces that are not allowing there any water, regardless if it's groundwater or seawater, to penetrate the ground. And you know, that kind of has to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then I think we're just causing more issues. So it's a big, and again, I think it's, even though I was focusing on looking at what this visual quality is going to be, not just from the streetscape and the people scale, but also what it is when you're coming into the harbor on the boat. You know, what is that experience that we all, oh, look, you know, we're coming back to Nantucket or coming home, and dropping our penny over at Brant Point. What is that visual quality going to look like with this new feature?
Oh, there she is.
Oh,
Sorry,
Sorry,
someone's up from the nap, so
No worries.
brief appearance.
I love it. Our youngest commissioner.
Yeah.
Yes, so Holly, yeah, as you were saying, yeah, that's stormwater. I mean, even thinking back to, the presentations that were made last fall with the ICROM group that
Yep.
was here, working with the NHA, presenting on projects, you know, looking at threats to buildings downtown, and it was like the Thomas Safety Warehouse and the Candle Factory. Like, so much of what those presentations were about, we're talking about stormwater management and how there's not much of it really downtown. And those threats to those buildings. So yeah, I think it's obviously such a multi-pronged
It is. It sure is.
problem with solutions that need to.
I was amazed when they did the multi-million-dollar rebuild of the Dreamland that they didn't put it up at all. And it's had a lot of damage if you look around, and doors rotting away, floods on the back end. I know there's all kinds of objections if you raise anything, but man, it's.
That's why we have our resilient Nantucket design guidelines that were not created in a vacuum with FEMA and the National Park Service specifically for historic districts. I think the biggest question is, though, if the town would, if the direction is to elevate that road, what does it do to those property owners? Are they gonna require? There is no bylaw that says they have to elevate their structures. And so, you know, there was been a little bit of a conversation on, do they look at taking our resilient Nantucket design guidelines and making it like a pilot, if you will? A subsection of it specifically for where we have elevated roads. That's something to think about. Because if you look at every single structure along Easy Street from within their study area, everything but the building right behind the former Kidding Around building, that larger one that's there.
The Susie Lister law.
Yes, that's the only one that has been built after 75. So it's a non-contributing structure already elevated. Everything else is pre-1955, all contributing historic, contributing
This is
resources.
the one that's, the one between the back end of the, Atlantic Cafe or whatever it is now, and, what used to be Killen Real Estate, that one was built was new and built.
That's it,
Yeah.
okay, but I don't know if that's fully elevated, I'd have to look at that. Some of them
They
were,
took
some
up quite a bit. They brought up
Did
about
it?
4 or 5 feet from where it used to be.
But I guess my point is within the design guidelines, we encourage elevations for contributing structures. About 4 feet is the average. And of course, we know we have flood zones that are anywhere from 7 all the way up to 9 and 10. And then you also got to take into consideration velocity zones, and velocity zones are a whole different ballgame,
Yeah.
those are all on the coast. And I guess just my point is what is that visual quality going to be? If we're looking at it, it can't be just a road. There's got to have to be a conversation of what's it look like with the structures. And with the fact that the coastal resiliency plan is talking about elevating our roadways along from Easy Street or from Washington Street up through, and then of course it continues on to through Brant Point and all that. There is gonna have to be a discussion about how those buildings are gonna be elevated. Right now, it's on a parcel by parcel, property by property owner that comes in and says, this is what we wanna do. There's a whole different things that come into play. So, yeah, I'm just glad we had the design guidelines before this project coming in. It's important conversation.
Mhm.
No, and it seems that all the discussions haven't said, I mean, the buildings that are on the other side, all that are on the steamboat landing side are not even discussed, because basically they're just gonna be gone. That's what it looked like to me from the proposals.
Right, well, we can, we'll
Continue.
continue this discussion, in April. So that brings us to a commission discussion for minimum maintenance of contributing structures. 10 New Whale and 5 Candle Street, which, 10 New Whale was in front of the HDC on Tuesday for their application to demolish. Holly, Angus, how, can you update everybody on how that went?
Well, I mean, there were maybe 10 different links to everything that was presented for historical setting and information, and the physical state of the building, and then the fire department came and spoke about, the building being unstable. And so I think the most commissioners were, that was the information in front of them, and it looked pretty bleak. I was hoping to see more information from a preservation side, and with Holly's help, that ended up being the motion, was that we were going to look for information from a preservation-oriented stone engineer or mason, that would come from Mass, was it Mass Historical or
Massachusetts Historical Commission usually references Preservation Massachusetts, which is the state nonprofits list of professional qualifications. Their list of,
Mhm.
yeah, that was my,
So thank you for that, Holly. So that gave sort of a point of departure for some other perspective on this, because with just this one perspective, it pretty much was saying it needed to be torn down, even if it were going to be rebuilt in like kind.
Right.
And I did bring up that the building at the beginning of Commercial Wharf, even though all the details were matching the historic 10 New Whale, it really just reads as a new building. So I think everybody agreed with that. So we'll see. It's gathering more information.
But Angus, so it does sound like they're at least going to have this preservation engineer. I think at one of our previous meetings, Sarah had recommended someone like Colin Evans, maybe, something like that. So the hope is at least we'd have that person review the site, right? Before they make a decision.
Well, we can't really choose who they
Right.
hire to do the survey
Right.
work. I mean, I think we probably have the option to come up with names and ask if we would do that, but that's not something that the applicant is going to be obliged um, to pay for.
I
They
would
won't be able to choose.
agree. I'm just saying I happen to think we might have a little bit of leeway with suggesting who they hire through kind of like other channels, if they ask. You know what I mean?
If they're open to suggestion, I know we would have plenty.
Okay, so maybe if you want to send me a list, that might be helpful.
Yeah, just basically at the end of the day, having a preservation engineer slash, mason, like somebody like Colin, or there's other people that on Nantucket that have that knowledge, and elsewhere in Massachusetts. So that way they can provide a report to the commission from a preservation perspective, on its capabilities, or not. And that way, at the end of the day, the HGC commissioners can make an informed decision. So I was happy to see that. And while this opportunity doesn't come up all the time, I think it was important, and I made sure that a copy of Appendix C was provided to the commissioners before the meeting to remind them of of what it states within Appendix C about the fact that the commission can request additional information to make their decision heard. So I'm glad that that was listened and they're moving in this direction. So hopefully I'll find out more and hopefully they reach out and say, okay, who do I contact for a list? So
Yeah, it seems like there's a conflict here that they're want to find someone who sort of meets the criteria, but will say, oh, yeah, it needs to come down.
and that was the whole justification of recommending somebody who is recommended within the state. There's only so many architectural historians in the state. There's only so many preservation engineers. So hopefully it would be already somebody that meets the qualifications, which is somebody that meet the qualifications under section 106, or excuse me, of the Secretary of Interior standard, excuse me, of that, and be able to actually provide that qualification. Say, okay, I'm not just somebody that's saying that.
Yeah.
So nothing against their structural engineer that they hired, who has many years of experience, but he does not have preservation experience, and that's the biggest thing.
There was one comment that caught my ear, and Holly, thanks so much for including the Appendix C for everyone to see there. The chair mentioned that that only applies to designated structures. And so I was a little confused with that because I thought everything within the period of significance was designated here. It was almost like, that building needed to be set apart and designated on its own for any of this to apply from the
Right.
Appendix C.
Yeah. I mean, one would argue, and I think I would, that I believe, and I'd have to find it specifically, but I believe the NHL update specifically points to this structure as an important industrial building. That was why I also referenced the 1923 C Street pump station that the town owns, that they appropriately basically rehabilitated, so it would bring back to its former state, but also be weather tight, so it doesn't flood. Imagine that, and use it for the pump station. So I think it was important to address that. And then it's also not only listed in the update of the National Historic Landmark designation, but I think it's shown as individually as a site-specific structure, so I'd have to look on that. I don't believe this structure ever received an HDC survey in the 80 effort. So I don't know, you know, of saying whether or not the HDC indicated this as a protected structure or not is, I think that's a little moot because they didn't do that for every single structure.
But
So-
would any building of this age in the core district be like automatically designated? Does it have to be specifically addressed individually?
I would agree with you. I don't think it would have to.
Yeah. Anyway, I was curious about that part.
Yeah.
I think that's a good question, Angus and Holly. It was one thing I was wondering about is as we're doing our surveys, is it worth coming up with some sort of like scale or, you know, way to tier or like, so we have a list of buildings that are extremely important for different reasons because, you know, like if you think, I'm using example like African Meeting House, not only is it a historic structure, but it has historic significance. And like, you know, even as we talk about, you know, Brand Point, like even though the structure has been rebuilt, the space is like historic significance. I'm just wondering if maybe we should work on some sort of like tiering, because Angus, this would be a good point where we could say, you know, in terms of like the industrial history of you know, the island, these structures, XYZ, including this, would be important because of that. And that way we have some sort of like documentation and it's on this list, I guess. But I don't know, that might be a lot of work to make, but I just wonder if it might be helpful in these types of situations. So even in more, I guess, a preemptive situation going in the future.
So if I may, when we did the survey plan, so my guess back up, when NPT got CPC funds to update our NHL nomination to extend it through the preservation world in the 60s, through when we received regulatory control for buildings, building permits and such to 1975, that was the rationale. So everything built prior to 1975 is deemed contributing. When that update was done in 2012, that shows every single structure that meets that classification, whether it's contributing or non-contributing. They also did a list of specific structures within specific eras that are significant for X, Y, and Z, to a point where they even outline, and this goes through every single type of architectural genre and time frame. So it's, and that document was also put in and referenced in our survey plan. That was one thing I made sure PAL had. So that's listed in our survey plan. I'd have to find that specific page and pull that up. And I believe this structure in the compound was indicated. It's been, I mean, even in the 80 effort, back up to when the town was going through that process, even in the 88, 89 effort, this structure met the qualifications of 50 years or more and a contributing resource located within the old HD even. So, but it did not have a survey. But to your point, Abby, I do think there's gonna, as we go through our survey efforts, identifying within all those 59 surveyed neighborhoods that we had to create, there's gonna have to be specifically that. And I think if we go back into our survey effort that we're working with on the CPC project with PIN, that's why I think the recognizance survey is so important. As a matter of fact, I think that maybe eventually, maybe in the next month or so, they'll be before us. Different on the next phase of that. They've identified so many structures. Now we need to assist figuring out which ones they want to key towards. I guess I'm long-winded on this to say, yes, I think it was already started with the update to the NHL. It was brought forth through with the survey plan. But maybe as we go through the individual neighborhoods for survey efforts and we do a recon survey for those particular neighborhoods, because I think that's going to be necessary. I think that point is well taken, that we want to identify within those particular neighborhoods what is most important. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I will find those specific spots and send those to you all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just more of a thought, like, you know, because Angus, it sounds like that was kind of the, oh, well, you guys didn't designate it. So if we can kind of proactively be like, well, we said everything in this neighborhood is this, you know, that way I'm hoping if this comes up again, we can avoid that specific being like, well, you didn't designate it. We can be like, well, actually we did. So at least that's not the argument used against it, because that is kind of like a fallacy argument of like, well, you didn't designate it, which doesn't mean we, you know, didn't think it was important. It was more like you're saying we're assuming everything in the, you know, downtown district is already designated. They're saying, well, if you didn't call it out, especially, you know what I mean? So I just feel like there might be a little way for us to at least shut down that argument if that's the argument that's going to be made.
Well, and I want to make it clear that the chair, I don't believe, said this wasn't designated or specified. I believe he said, you know, this only applies to the buildings that are. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean, but I mean, I'm just saying, I think if we can at least kind of cover it and say, we've specifically said these buildings are important because of this, then there won't be any ambiguity about it, if you will.
right.
Yeah, I think the confusion is coming from specifically in the demolition policy, you know, it lays out definitions of what is a historic structure versus significant structure versus protected structure is defined as any significant structure which the commission determines is in the public interest to preserve or rehabilitate rather than demolish. But as far as I know, like, I don't think certainly in the 5 years that I've been working for MPT, like, I don't think the HCC has ever had like a hearing to say like this is a protected structure or not, right? I mean.
It
So,
seems more of a blanket thing than a specified building specifically.
yeah, and I mean, in here, you know, a historic structure defined as a structure listed on the National Register of Historic Places or determined potentially eligible for listing, which we know if this is, since it's a contributing structure to the NHL, it's de facto on the National Register.
Right.
So. All right, well, I'm glad that, you know, I just based on our conversation of a couple months ago, you know, we talked about how the HGC had the power to compel the applicant or any applicant in such a case to submit additional information, including a report from a qualified preservation professional. And so I'm glad that they are doing that. That's, I think, very good news. Great, so if there's nothing else on this topic, next up we have commission goals. Abby, did you want to pull up that document for us to go over?
Yes.
Thank you.
Trying to see if can I share?
Yep, you should be able to.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Can you guys see that? I can make it, let me make it bigger.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
now we can.
The first item is the survey, and as I said, I just put this in right before the meeting that Holly had sent the report saying everything finally came back, and she's going to work on putting it on the website, but that was the good news there. For the second part, Holly, we're still awaiting the RFQ, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. The third one, we actually talked about today, the working to preserve the bollards. It sounds like there's actually good kind of progress going there. I think that's great. And as we said, we're gonna see if we can possibly have colonial stone, you know, because they'll be back on the island. If they can quickly look at the Meridian stone, that would be great. The sewer force main, I think nothing has happened since, so David's just gonna keep Holly in the loop as things go along. NPS grants, we had said that the status of grants is up in the air with the current administration. I don't believe anything has changed. No. The section 106 reviews, we talked about the executive order, but also, as I mentioned here, we had the official letters that we received from the firm, and we're gonna send our letters. So that is kind of on track as well. The MOU I have here, Holly and Rita, we're meeting with Stephen. Do we have an update on that?
We did meet with Stephen, and it wound up not the drafts, didn't really come up in that discussion. Holly was going to send, our sort of version of that to Stephen for the rest of the HDC to look at and see if they would be in agreement with it, before sending it to town council.
All right. So Holly, you're just gonna send that to the chair of the HDC?
Yes.
Okay, historic tax credits, we obviously know, we've reviewed 89 Easton Street today, so. Education, we had talked about the super index for Nantucket in mind. I don't think there's anything updated there. Updating education, there is an NAPC training on deconstruction versus demolition. It's this month on March 27th. If people are interested, I know Holly sent an email. So we have a code, we can go for free. So that would be next Thursday.
Yep.
So that's coming up. Community education. That's ongoing. We're working on a process to establish on Nantucket how us and other municipalities can work on it. And then the other two things are also ongoing, working on getting a historic disaster resiliency workshop going. I know NCA had been hosting workshops with ICR, which is a consulting firm, and then kind of ongoing engagement with our peers. So that's everything I had. Not a lot of new stuff this month, if you will.
Mhm.
Any questions?
I don't know if maybe we should have a line on here just in terms of like advisory to select board and the town at large, you know, for example, like our review of the Easy Street project, and you know, next month I think we'll be looking at the town meeting warrant and identifying articles to potentially have you know, recommendations on if we wanted to vote as a commission. So that is something that, you know, obviously is a big part of what we do as a commission, and I think it would be nice to see that reflected on here.
Okay. Do you know what category? I can add it, I agree.
I mean, I guess it's advising sort of education, but it's also just I mean, I guess it's education, right? Would we say?
I mean, it's educating / advisory. I don't know. I think maybe advisory would be a category
Mhm.
because that's kind of the key role of
Of
our commission towards
yeah.
town things. To be. I think it's a good-
Okay.
yeah,
I was going
anyone?
to say in the education part, the Nantucket Historical Commission came to mind in the HTC meeting when we were discussing an 80 or 90-year-old building that was, having a hard time getting a new home. It had been lifted with the idea that, well, the HTC had given permission for it to be moved only. And so,
The
it-
Duke's Road.
yeah, and so I, I heard a voice from the commissioner saying, the people buying need to understand that these buildings are, protected to some degree. And if you're going to get something in the period of significance, pre-75, that it's that to be aware of that, not just to assume that that could be demolished or moved.
Mhm.
So if there's some sort of outreach that we could do, with the realtors, it would be, I think that would be helpful in easing sort of um, the expectations of developers and new owners.
Maybe we should do that workshop again,
Yeah,
Holly.
do you have a contact for NARAB to
Mhm.
maybe reach out to them and say?
Yep.
If they would, we would love to be a part of their continuing education again this year.
That's a good
Because I do agree that is key. And it also, I would say, I think it does seem to be even shifting a little bit more, like it is getting more difficult, I would say, to get approval to demolish a house here, which is good. In my opinion, it seems like in the last few years, I think the HDC has been a little
Hopefully,
tougher.
No, I agree with
we
you.
do have
Um,
people out here who make their living by bending the HBC for their clients.
No comment on that.
Right.
But we do have an organized group working, people working against us on this, but hopefully the HDC is defending.
I think it's all about education. It goes right back down to knowing that, the tax assessor's date isn't 99% of the time not correct. Just because it says it was built in 1999, no, it might have been moved there from 1999 and it was built in 1881. There's been very many cases of that. So yes, that point, it's all about educating. That's why our survey efforts are so important. But in the interim, working with Wisconsin Trust, MPT, to be able to get the information out there. On that note, I will contact my contact for NARAB to see what their schedule is for their next education component.
Right, because it's been in like June.
Usually it's in
Yeah,
June,
right?
yeah.
And I
If
can't,
they're putting that together now, I think it'd
Right.
be great to.
yeah.
And
sort
I'm
of ping them, say we're.
wondering on Angus's point, because I was not there for that discussion about Two Dukes Road. However, of course, in my staff comments, I was vehemently opposed any demolition of the structure. I'm wondering if there is something that NARAB would like not only to do the education for them, but is there some sort of education document that we could come up with? I don't really, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know what that would look like or what it would be, but I think there's more about not just facilitating education to the realtor, but also providing, I've had, after the last time we did it, which was 2 years ago, I think,
Yeah, I don't remember.
there were some realtors that contacted me and said, hey, I got a question about this. And there was quite a few that did, but then that dwindled. And so I'm wondering if there is a way to provide the power to them to look at information, okay, well, if you're curious. Because again, there's this misconception about the tax assessor's information. Oh, it says this. No, it's not right. So that's just my thought on that.
I think that's a really great idea, Holly, is an actual something that a pamphlet or even just a single page that lists resources, you know, saying the assessor is X, but here are the other resources to be able to find, you know, the history of your structure. You may be eligible for historic tax credits in a rehabilitation. Like there could be a bunch of information so that, you know, anything that meets that criteria they have more information to work with.
And on that note, which I think I mentioned to the HTC, but I can't remember. HTC for a long time has a document that it was required before I even started to, if you have a historic structure, you compile all the historic information together and indicate whether or not there's HTC survey, and it gave a whole list of where you could find information. And it was over 10 years outdated. And I wanted to update it, and I finally did. So like NPT and PIN, and the fact the Athenaeum has their digital archives and all this information, as well as what we've done as a commission, the survey plan, updated surveys, what the Macris in general, and that not all of them are available on Macris. So just educating, because in the push to be more energy efficient, and the push that the state has been on jurisdictions on, even when you're altering a existing structure, there have been more and more, which I'm glad, more and more requests for historic determinations. Or actually it comes to be, somebody gets an approval, they're starting their construction, and I gotta meet the HERS rating. Holly, can you write me a letter? Well, it's not like that. You know, again, we need to make sure at the end of the day that work has actually been reviewed consistent, because I can't assume that every single application that comes before the HTC from a historic structure is actually, they're wanting exemption. So we know ahead of time, okay, get that historic determination in, and then you can write the letter, not this after the fact, that, because at the end of the day, I have to certify that the work that is being done is not going to preclude the structure from being a historic resource. So there's that education push. And I think realtors need to know that as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think any ideas that this commission has, I am all ears. And I did want to, if it's okay, go back to the 10 new whale. I did find in the NHL update, the list, 300 some odd pages. 10 new whale is listed, Greek revival, said mid 1800s, but we know it's a little older. Industrial electric company as a contributing resource. So I mean, again, to the thought that it's not, it is.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Abby, as always, for maintaining this document, and thank you as always for doing the minutes. Our next item is approval of minutes from the February meeting that were in the packet. Did anyone have any edits or notice anything?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, motion to approve February 21st, 2025 minutes made by Clement, seconded by George. Clement?
Aye.
Angus?
Aye.
Abby?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Is there any other business? No? Would anyone like to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion to adjourn made by Clement, seconded by George. Clement?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Angus?
Aye.
Abby?
Aye.
I'm aye as well. Thank you all very much. And we'll see you in April.
April
Thank you, guys.
18th.
Great weekend.
I just,
Okay,
You
looked at-
too.
April
Bye,
18th.
guys.
Be there and be square. Bye.
yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Who did the